Hello and welcome to my presentation. I'm going to be discussing two works of art in relation to Aeschylus's Agamemnon. The title of my presentation is Death, Man, and the Female Figure. Death is a prominent theme in Agamemnon and follows the characters throughout the story. Women and men are portrayed as opposing forces, often one being the cause of the downfall of the other. And the first painting portrays the sacrifice of Iphigenia, and the other portrays Agamemnon's murder. Here we have the painting, the first painting. It's called The Sacrifice of Iphigenia by Giovanni Battista Tiepolo. Style is Rococo, year 1770. The art medium is oil. Just to give the picture some context, Agamemnon states, "And I call Apollo of healing, god of healing, to stop Artemis delaying the fleet in her demand for another sacrifice, one which violates all human law." Lines 173 to 174, 177 and 178. Tiepolo painted a vivid picture of Iphigenia's sacrifice. Tiepolo makes a point to lighten areas where he draws the attention of the observer. A few areas Tiepolo draws the observer's attention is to the ship, Artemis, and Iphigenia. Here we can see that he is drawing the connection between the circumstances of Iphigenia's sacrifice. It is quite interesting that Agamemnon in this particular painting sort of fades into the background through the darker tones the artist chose to portray his character. The painting is much more in tune with Aeschylus' version of the story, but it also offers a bit of more form to Artemis and brings her to life. Here we go. So we have Artemis and the ship in the background, and as Agamemnon states, "How can I just leave this fleet and let my fellow warriors down? Their passionate demand for sacrifice to calm the winds lies within their rights, even the sacrifice of virgin blood. So be it. All may be all." Lines 248 to 253. The ship and Artemis are important because and these are two areas which Tiepolo lightens up compared to some of the rest of the picture. He kind of shines a light on the situation that is happening. Artemis is causing issues with the Greeks' ability to sail. This is preventing them from reaching their goal. If you look a bit closer, you can see that the seas are not calm and that the ships look a bit disheveled as if they've been hit with storms. In the upper portion of the painting, Artemis is pictured with cupids and her stag. And she's reaching her hand out as if to show that she's at peace with her offering and will take it. Artemis is seemingly accepting Iphigenia. The sacrifice is more of an offering than the death of a virgin. And by having Artemis reach out her hand to Iphigenia, seemingly accepting of her fate, the situation seems to be one of acceptance rather than forced. Then we have Agamemnon right here. Tiepolo painted Agamemnon in an interesting manner. He does not stand out very much and is pushed more towards the background, and he's clearly not the focus of the painting. His garbs do not make him appear to be a king. Instead, he reminded me a lot of like an older merchant. However, he does seem to appeal to Artemis as his head is facing towards her, as if he is attempting to draw her attention to his actions. So we have direct line of sight towards Artemis. Then we have his dagger and Iphigenia. The color of Agamemnon's dagger, it's even more fading than his garbs, and it is not imposing. It does not strike fear. One reason could be because, like Agamemnon, the dagger and the sacrifice is not entirely the focus of the painting. Instead, Iphigenia and her relation to the situation is the focus. Because Iphigenia is clearly the focus because of her near central position relative to what is going on around her. So we see here she's pretty much near center of the painting. Her color is much more vibrant, which could be due to her purity as a virgin, but also because she is innocent compared to those around her. Tiapolo places her on a pedestal. So it is a sacrificial altar, but she's also quite on a pedestal. She looks a lot more regal than her father does. We also have the women on the ground, and then the soldiers relative to them. There are soldiers placed at different posts surrounding the event that is taking place. The same goes for the different women who are around the altar. The attention of the soldiers are drawn more towards Artemis rather than Iphigenia. As we can see, their line of sight matches with Agamemnon's. Like Agamemnon, the soldiers are much more concerned with appeasing Artemis than sacrifice of Iphigenia. The women, on the other hand, are much more upset by the sacrifice taking place and do not hold as much concern for Artemis than the rest. It is possible that they are Iphigenia's maids and cared for her well-being much more than the rest. Tiapolo's portrayal of the sacrifice of Iphigenia is pretty spot on with Aeschylus' version. Essentially, Agamemnon is much more concerned with his war with the Trojans than the well-being of his daughter. Accordingly, Pavlou suggests that Iphigenia's sacrifice occurred because she received from Agamemnon a letter which allowed her to appear at Aulis as a bride. Circumstances of her placement with Agamemnon during the Trojan campaign comes down to her position as a bride, yet she was subsequently sacrificed. Tiapolo and Aeschylus play heavily into the domino effects leading to the situation in which the characters find themselves in. Finlay suggests that Agamemnon is a lonely figure who understands that he's alienated from his family and position as king. So here we could say that he is possibly doing all this because he feels alienated from his family and his position as king because he's been going to war for so long. In the painting, Tiapolo paints Agamemnon in a manner that shows readiness, however, rather than hesitation in committing the sacrifice. It is possible that there is some weight that Agamemnon carries from his actions because of his rather short and cold interaction with Clytemnestra upon his arrival home. All those things you said, don't puff me up with such female honors, or grovel there before me babbling tributes, like some barbarian. Don't invite envy to cross my path by strewing it with cloth. Lines 1079 to 1083. So there's kind of a weird dynamic here where he's willing to sacrifice his daughter more for his soldiers than to care for his daughter and his family. And the chorus goes, so Agamemnon stilled his heart to make his own daughter the sacrifice, an offering for the Achaean fleet, so he could prosecute the war waged to avenge that woman Helen. Lines 261 to 265. Our next painting is called Clytemnestra by Pierre Narcisse Guérin, year 1870, style neoclassicism, and the medium used is oil. Guérin's painting posits a different version of events surrounding the death of Agamemnon than Aeschylus' portrayal. The largest and most significant difference is the hesitation of Clytemnestra and the position of Aeschylus. Let's look a bit more into it and see how this differs even more. So, first thing that is an attention grabber is the presence of Aeschylus. Guérin places Aeschylus' hands in a very specific manner. His right hand is on Clytemnestra's shoulder, and his left hand is pointing towards Agamemnon. Add these two factors with his facial expression and his posture, and it is as though he is pushing Clytemnestra to murder her husband. Aeschylus is like acting as a sort of devil on Clytemnestra's shoulder. Then we have Clytemnestra, and her position is quite interesting because overall her posture shows hesitation. The dagger in her right hand is face backwards towards Aeschylus, further showing hesitation as it is not in a position ready for stabbing Agamemnon. As Aeschylus is pushing her, she's also pushing back towards him. And her eyes show a sense of shock and lack of determination, like those of Aeschylus. Then we have Agamemnon in the background. In the play, he had returned home after the war and when he was murdered. Guerin shows a vulnerable Agamemnon lying asleep in his bed. His chest is open, as if to provide clear view of where he will be stabbed. Behind him lay his armors and his weapons, and it is possible that he's not laying in his marriage room. Instead, he's probably sleeping in his own private quarters. Clytemnestra is strong in Aeschylus' representation, but weaker in Guerin's. And Aeschylus portrays Clytemnestra as making the decision and committing the murder on her own with her own hands. As we have here, as the chorus goes, old violent aggression loves to generate new troubles. Among evil men, soon or late, when it's fated to be born, new violence springs forth. Lines 903 to 906. Then we have Clytemnestra. I stand now where I struck, where I achieved what I set out to do. I did all this, I won't deny the fact. I stabbed him twice, he gave out 2 groans. Then, as his limbs went limp, I hit again a 3rd blow. Lines 1630 to 1632, 1636 to 1639. Then we have Clytemnestra. By that justice I exacted from my child, by 80, goddess of destruction, by the fury to whom I offer up this man. Lines 1693 to 1695. But Aeschylus makes her much stronger and determined than the character in Guerin's paintings portray. Guerin highlights a much weaker side of Clytemnestra, who has to rely on words and pressure from Aeschylus. In Guerin's painting, Aeschylus seems to have more power in his relationship with Clytemnestra, but is just as weak since he needs to rely on her to murder Agamemnon. In Guerin's painting, it seems that each character's vulnerability is placed on display. However, Aeschylus focuses much more on the strengths of the characters. According to Vezu, in Aeschylus' portrayal, Clytemnestra unveils the truth, reporting the exact sequence of the actions leading to the accomplishment of Agamemnon's murder. This differs significantly to Guerin's portrayal, who paints a rather meek version of Clytemnestra. And we have here, she admitted to what she did, but I guess this was nowhere in her confession. Tiepolo and Guerin paint portrayals of different events which occur in Aeschylus' Agamemnon. Tiepolo's portrayal was a bit more in line with Aeschylus', but not diverging too greatly from the original depiction of Iphigenia's sacrifice. On the other hand, Guerin portrayed each character as vulnerable, contrary to their depiction in Aeschylus' Agamemnon. Death was a theme on both of the paintings, both sharing the vulnerabilities of the characters who will die. Tiepolo was much more quiet with his depiction of the sacrifice, painting the dagger and Agamemnon in a manner that placed their figures in the background. Contrariwise, Guerin made it apparent to the viewer that Agamemnon was going to die, drawing attention to his open chest and the 2 characters behind his death. The diverging masculine and feminine figures were intertwined like yin and yang. Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter because of a female goddess who was threatening his military campaign. Clytemnestra killed Agamemnon because he killed their daughter. And from Guerin's point of view, and she was pressured by Aeschylus to kill Agamemnon. The cycle of death converges with the interactions between the masculine and feminine figures. Thank you very much and have a good day.